welcome to KRDO's exclusive coverage of the 1987 Pikes Peak Marathon and Ascent. I'm John Glenn. Of course, with me now is our expert color commentator, Fred Mays. Fred, thanks for being with us here tonight.
Good to be back, John.
You bet. Now, of course, this race is the last leg of the Triple Crown, the third leg, and this probably has every element you could probably want to ask for in a great race. It's got great competition, it's got great scenery, and of course, it's got a great course. Now, this course is one of the toughest in the world, yes, in the world. It goes up 7,000 feet in altitude, over 13.4 miles going straight up. This is quite an imposing picture. 13.4 miles that will test not only the athlete's physical stamina, but their mental toughness as well. It all begins in downtown Manitou Springs in front of City Hall and the police station. The course proceeds down Manitou Avenue to Ruskin Avenue. The 1.5 mile run ends when the dirt begins at Bar Trail. This narrow path is the first test for the runners. The Manitou Incline climbs some 3,000 feet in just 2 miles. After cresting Mount Manitou, the course goes past French Creek and the smoothest part of the run, if there is such a thing. A series of rolling hills leads the runners to the woods and bar camp. This water and medical station is a mental marker for the athletes. It isn't quite halfway, but it's close enough. Now it's on to Dismal Forest and then Timberline for the last 3 miles of the course.
The last 3 miles of the course will take a third of your time overall. If you're using a 3-hour ascent time, the last 3 miles will take an hour to climb or run, however you're doing at that point.
The runners usually have trouble with footing during the last couple of miles of the course. Loose rocks coupled with unstable weather conditions can make this push seem endless. At that point, the athletes reach the 16 golden stairs.
The pain in the side of the runners, which everybody always regret, is the 16 golden stairs. That's about 3/8 of a mile from the summit. There's hard rocks they're climbing over, and the trail is very, very narrow. If it's typically like in the past, usually there is water and the rocks are very, very slick.
If they can survive that, the finish is just a step or two away, and then they can say, "I've conquered Pikes Peak." Well, the first part of the race was, of course, Saturday morning, Fred, the Ascent. Not the greatest weather on Saturday morning for August in Colorado Springs, kind of cloudy and very, very cool.
It was a real cool morning. There was lots of fog down at the bottom, kind of a cold morning, actually.
It seemed like the lower you were, the less clouds there were. The higher up you went, the more clouds and the more mist and dampness there were. Of course, a lot of runners came out. A record crowd of over 1,400 runners were on hand. They were stretching out very early in the morning, trying to get loosened up to go way up that big peak.
As you know, John, I was a part of that crowd, and I was a little leery at that point as to whether or not I really wanted to take on the mountain or not, but I'm happy I did.
A lot of the runners really weren't skeptical at all. They had a lot of confidence. There's the rain gear. They were a little skeptical of the clouds and the damp conditions, but then again, they wanted to win the race, and a lot of these people from all over the country just to run in the Pikes Peak Ascent.
Fred Woodard. I'm from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I'm here to take the race.
Tom again, Brooklyn, New York, and I'm here to finish.
Bill Harold, Little Rock, Arkansas. Here to have a great time.
I trained a little.
No, I'm just going to enjoy it and hope to finish it.
This is my second time. Enjoyed it very much last time up. Looking forward to it again.
I didn't run this year. I'm mainly playing for softball and basketball, so I'm going to get up there and rough it.
You only have a short time, you do what you can do. So I'm running with my family, you know. I got the button here, and we get out there and give it our best.
Well, as you can see, the runners are ready. We're ready, so we're back with the start of the race. Welcome back, everybody, to KRDO's exclusive coverage of the 1987 Pikes Peak Ascent and Marathon. And as we told you on Saturday morning for the Ascent, it was very, very chilly. 36 degrees up on top of the mountain, 40 degrees in Manitou Springs. I wore my ski jacket and a wool sweater. But take it from a runner who ran the race, Fred Mays. Fred, it was very, very chilly up there. How'd you handle that?
It was a little foreboding to think it was almost freezing up on top, but we were ready, and I knew I was going to win the Ascent, so no problem.
All righty, let's take a look at the video really quickly. The start of the race, as we said, it was very chilly out. Well over 1,400 runners, and that is a record for the Pikes Peak Ascent.
Yeah, it is. It's the first time we've actually gotten that many runners. Here we are, ready on the starting line. Most everybody's warmed up at this point. I dressed in several layers because I had anticipated what it was going to be like higher on up and knew that we'd probably be shedding layers or adding them as you needed to.
We saw a lot of fans lined up at the start there. They had a lot of clothing on, and believe me, they didn't shed their clothing once the race started. Speaking of the race starting, there they go. 1,400 people started out, and of course, we have a jackrabbit that loves to start out first and try to take the lead, but it doesn't last very long, does it?
No, it doesn't. And really the best advice in the marathon is to start out slow and then slow down.
I mentioned the breakout by the early runner there. One of the men that comes up very, very quickly and takes off very early is Scott Elliott. He pulls out very, very early in the race, and of course he ends up winning it with a great, great time.
He wasn't really challenged that much on the Ascent Saturday morning. You can see there we're heading up Ruxton toward Bar Trail. There's Scott, of course, well in the lead. There we are on Bar Trail. Judy McCreary, of course, Chamberlain.
Now about this race that makes it special is only 1.5 miles is on asphalt. The rest of it is on dirt, rocks, anything you can grab your feet onto to make it up that hill. And of course, Bar Trail is interesting because it has a 3,000-foot incline in only 2 miles, so the runners really have a test early.
Yeah, I once had calculated the percentage of slope, and it's equal to Fillmore Hill, for those of you who know Fillmore Hill. And from the start, oh, good runner there. He's ready.
Fred Mays ran the race yesterday. Fred did a good job. He looks a little sluggish right there going up Bar Trail, but I know, Fred, you did complete the race, and that is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, it is. There goes the cog, of course, behind us.
And we talk a lot about, Fred, we talk a lot about the clothing aspect. A lot of race runners actually started out with a lot of clothing on, and as they went up the hill, they started stripping it off.
Yeah, as you saw earlier, I dressed in several layers. I had a Gore-Tex suit, the pants on, the jacket wrapped around me, a regular singlet, and then another shirt on top of that. So I knew I could take layers on and off as I needed to.
Okay, right here, we're right below, it looks like French Creek. The trails are starting to even out a little bit. It's probably the easiest part of the course right here, isn't it, Fred?
Right near the top of French Creek, it's not too bad. As you said earlier, John, the portion from the foot of Bar Trail up to Mount Manitou is really steep, and it's so short that it's just constant uphill.
Now, for our part of this, we had 6 crews on the mountain. You can imagine how much effort and time it took to put this together. 6 crews are up there with parkas on, with heavy clothes on. They did a good job on getting all these runners as they're coming right by them. As you notice, that trail isn't very wide, so our crews are right on the lip of the trail, getting some great shots for you.
Most of the good runners try and make their position changes before you hit Bar Trail, because as you can see, once you hit the trail, it's very, very difficult to pass anyone.
We also noticed yesterday that half the runners going up Bar Trail actually walked up Bar Trail because it was so congested that they didn't have much room to run.
Yes, this section especially, there really is no room to pass anybody, and it is so steep that you just literally almost hike it up.
Now, is it a bother for the runners, as we mentioned, to take off the clothing? A lot of them are holding the clothing as they go up the hill. Does that bother you after a while?
No, not particularly. I wrap the things around my waist and just tie them and try to keep running and just add a shirt or take it off as you need to.
No, our crew didn't go over the hill there. They just had a nice little shot for us. A lot of people, it is a dangerous course. We may mention that, the fact that these trails are so narrow that you can't really afford to lose your concentration too much.
No, you can't, especially once you get above timberline, because you lose a lot of your sense of awareness up there.
Well, it is amazing to think that 1,400 people actually ran up this mountain yesterday, or make that Saturday. It was a very, very difficult course, and of course, with the weather conditions, a lot of people thought that since it was so cool, it would actually hinder the runners, but actually that's a help.
Yeah, it is. The cool temperatures, particularly at those elevations, keep your body temperature down. You could easily overheat trying to read 14 miles uphill.
Here's an example of a man that's walking up. He's taking his time. He doesn't care about his time in general, but he wants to make sure to get up the mountain in one good stead.
Oh, Bar Camp, boy, you're so happy to see Bar Camp. Once you reach Bar Camp, you're really more than halfway up the course, and so at that point you make a decision whether you're going to continue or turn back.
It's kind of a mental point for the runners, isn't it? They realize it isn't quite halfway, but it's a stopping point where they can realize that, yes, they actually have gone up halfway up the mountain.
Yeah. When I reached Bar Camp, I know I had doubts a couple of times as to whether or not I wanted to continue on, but hearing the people at Bar Camp, knowing you've reached that far, gives you the incentive to keep going.
Here's the leader right now, Scott Elliott. He had a 5-minute lead going up the mountain. As you said, he didn't stop very long for water, took a couple sips and then took off. The race itself was a very good race. He had a 5-minute lead though. The rest of the pack started to catch up right about there.
Here we are, Bar Camp, more runners coming through. It's the first place that you can get either water or Exceed, which is kind of an electrolyte product to replenish some of the minor elements that you've lost. on the way up.
Now here's Miasto, the leader through the bar trail here. She's the leader for the women. She looks like she's struggling a little bit of awkward style going up the mountain, but boy, she is strong.
Real strong, real unusual running style, but as you said, she ended up winning it, so she must be doing something right.
And there's Judy Chamberlain, of course. She's the champion from last year, the Triple Crown champion for this year. She did a really good job. She's in second place right here, but pretty soon she's going to drop off to third place. And yes, even the animals had protective clothing on. Nice little scarf there for the puppy.
It's amazing. We had runners from 40 to 50 states participate in the Ascent, and international people from Sweden, Germany, Japan, just about every country represented.
We saw Jane Day there, who was in third, who's going to make her move right after bar trail and push Judy a little bit. Here's some of the rest of the pack runners. As you can see, the fog is starting to settle in on the tree line there. It gets quite foggy and quite damp.
There was some fog and clouds settling in. Once we got above those at about 10,000 feet.
And of course, a lot of little kids on hands, all bundled up, ready for a nice race. And of course, we can't forget that bar trail is a water stop for a lot of these athletes, and it's an important water stop. They have to replenish their body fluids. And of course, it's a main concern of how they're going to get that water back up the mountain. Our Mike Casava has more from Fort Carson.
You may be wondering what the United States Army has to do with the water that's needed for runners of the Pikes Peak Ascent and Marathon. Well, if it wasn't for these men in green, here's how the water that needs to be taken to remote areas of the mountain would be moved. That's right, by llama.
We're using a CH-47 Chinook helicopter to airlift 2 water trailers, 400 gallons of water each, and a cargo net full of 5-gallon water bottles.
Now, why does the Army volunteer to take the water up?
For 2 reasons. The civilian community doesn't have the airlift capabilities that the Army has. And secondly, we will simulate a wartime mission by airlifting these things up to the mountain. And this is something that we have to do during the war.
For the man in charge, the Army's help was certainly a blessing.
Well, if we hadn't got it up here, I'd had to work all night placing it in by manually. That's how important it is, because at the higher altitude, your body is burning up so much more liquids that if you don't have it to replace it, we'd have a regular crash and we're going to have to carry most people off.
Plus, the weather comes into the picture, too.
Anytime that we get below about 60 degrees and anywhere between about 40 and 60 is perfect weather to run in. When it's overcast like it was yesterday, overcast like it is today, ideal.
Even with ideal temperatures for this year's race, still the best athletes can suffer from dehydration. We're here at the 8th and final water stop about a mile from the finish line. And to be honest with you, I'm glad I'm sitting down.
How are we doing?
Okay.
All right.
Look terrific.
What are the people, what's their feeling here on the last water station, in your opinion?
They're getting to the point where they're not really sure of how far they got to go and how it feels.
Thanks, Mike. And of course, now after we leave Bar Trail, we go through the woods a little more, right to Timberline. And of course, then it's the Cirque.
It is. A-frame is the last of the trees, and then we're above timberline from there on up.
Now, Scott Elliott is the leader right here again. He has about a 5-minute lead on the rest of the pack. He looks fairly strong right there.
He looks real strong. Here's the Cirque, and we put up some barricades there. Over that edge, it's 200 feet straight down.
Not a pleasant thing if you happen to hit that guardrail. So you really want to be careful. You want to have your wits about you and make sure that you keep your momentum going straight up and not to the either side.
You really do, John. And right above timberline, that's the first time you can actually see the top. You can hear the music up above and the people cheering. You look up and you know it's only 3 miles, but it appears to be about 3,000 miles.
And we saw Michael Tobin there, who was in second place. And this is Chester Carl. Chester's a 3-time champion, the defending 86 champion. He looks fairly good right there. But Fred, it is tough. Now tell us from your own point of view how tough it is running up this mountain when you've come all that distance and now you're on tree line. You start to get the elements hitting you, and it starts to get pretty tough.
It's compounded also, John, by oxygen depletion at that point. It's the reverse effect almost as deep diving. Once you get up that high and you come up so quickly, you become disoriented, you become giddy a lot of times. You just lose track of where you are. It's very easy to either make a wrong turn or slip off the trail.
And that shot right there tells you how you can get dizzy real easily. They wind up very, very steep, and if I did that, I guarantee you I'd fall off.
Fortunately, that steepness and the winding takes a long, long time. My son ran this race at 16. He was the youngest runner, and we made this pact that we were going to run it together. And as you know, I didn't win it, and I finished considerably later than he did.
A lot of our camera crew saw you on water stops like that sitting down, Fritz. It was a tough race for you, I know.
Yeah, it sure was. He asked me when I got in trouble, and I told him at the starting gun. So.
Now right here, of course, we're right above the clouds. It's a beautiful view coming down on the mountain. These runners may be tired and may be exhausted, but it is a very, very pretty sight.
It is. Going through the trees, I was hoping to get to Timberline and be able to look back at the city. And of course, the city was completely cloud covered, but you had clear blue sky above you, and you could almost see forever. And the feeling of being actually above the clouds and know that you'd run that distance was amazing.
Here we come up on 16 golden stairs. They're not very golden when you have to run them, are they?
No, they're not golden at all. It's almost rock climbing, just hand over foot up those 16 stairs.
Now, as you mentioned, it is pure rock right there. You're actually walking on top of rock. There isn't much leverage for you. There isn't much to grip on. You actually have to keep your wits about you and actually know what you're doing.
You do. At this point, your legs, your thighs are just absolutely burning. Parts of my body hurt that I didn't even know about. My hips really hurt from that just constant uphill grind, lower back. As you can see, people are stumbling, just trying to keep their footing and keep going up.
And not many runners at this point are actually running. A lot of them are actually race walking or actually forcing them power walking up that hill because there isn't much room to run in the first place. And second of all, after running up 12 miles, it's actually pretty steep and you're actually very, very tired.
That and it's really deceiving because the pace you have below, once you get above Timberline, that last 3 miles took me nearly an hour and a half, and I normally run about 8-minute miles. So you can see how drastically that altitude affects you.
Of course, our crews are up there, and the altitude affected them a little bit too, I have to say. We were a little dizzy. I was on top of the mountain about 6:30 in the morning, and it was very, very chilly, very cold. We did a very good job, I think, of getting our crews down the path and getting these great shots that you're seeing.
You can see water is beginning to drain off the mountain. The trail got wet and actually water on it for the first time.
There you see the fog and the clouds starting to come in. They're getting up there way above the clouds. It was very misty and very damp, and a lot of the runners actually grabbed blankets. There you can see the blanket of cloud, if you will, over Colorado Springs. A great shot by our camera crew. It really set the stage. It was almost as if we were in an airplane on top of Pikes Peak.
Really magnificent. And right just before the finish, the clouds began to roll up the mountain, and as you said, it got very, very cold. I put a jacket on.
Here's the winner. Scott Elliott comes in, wins it in 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 33 seconds. 4 minutes ahead of the rest of the pack. There goes that space blanket around him to keep him warm. He was an exhausted young man. He gave everything he had, so he won the championship. A great race by Scott Elliott.
I'm really happy. I knew I was on a good pace, and it was going to be hard for anybody to catch me. When I got to Timberline, I kept checking behind me, and there wasn't anybody really close, so I kept a good pace, and I did it.
Okay.
I just wanted to stay near the front, and I knew what kind of splits I wanted to run, and I was checking my watch all the time, and I was on split or a little bit ahead, so I felt good, and I kept going.
Now, Scott didn't have to look back at all because he was 4 minutes ahead of the next runner. Michael Tobin came in second, 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds. He looks pretty fresh there for a man that just ran up on top of Pikes Peak, 7,000-foot altitude gain. He looks pretty fresh, but he wants the space blanket anyway to keep warm. And, of course, the third-place finisher was Chester Carl, the three-time champion, as I mentioned. He's the 86 defending champion. He came in third in 2 hours, 15 minutes, and 52 seconds. Not too bad for Chester.
No, it sure isn't. Chester usually owns this mountain, and he must have just had an off day, but he's amazing.
He is an amazing athlete. And coming in fifth now would be Greg Burrell. He came in fifth, but overall, Greg came in first in the Triple Crown. He had a great Garden of the Gods, a very good Diet Pepsi. He looks a little tired right here going up to the finish, but Greg's a heck of a competitor. And as I said, he won the Triple Crown rather easily this year, and he's a good young man, a good runner. He deserves the Triple Crown championship.
Well, I'm pretty happy about it. I'll be thinking about everybody if I win when I'm down on the beaches, so I'm pretty happy about it.
Okay, what was your strategy today in running? You got to fifth place, so what was your strategy coming up the mountain?
Go for the Triple Crown and not the glory. just to hang in there and not try to go out too fast like I did last time I ran it, which was 3 years ago, but just to be real conservative and get up to the top.
Now, as far as the women, well, Chris Miasto came in first. She had a record time of 2 hours, 39 minutes, and 1 second. Chris is from New Hampshire, so she really isn't used to running up a 7,000-foot mountain or 7,000-foot altitude gain. She was happy and surprised that she actually won the race.
I can't believe it. I mean, I knew my competition was very tough, and I didn't think that I had prepared properly. And I had never done the whole mountain, even while I'd been here training. All I'd done was up to the top of the incline.
What's it like coming from New Hampshire to an altitude like this? It's got to be something total shock in your body.
Well, yeah, I bonked out the last 2 miles. And the last 2 weeks that I've been here, I haven't felt that great, and my training was not where it should have been. And that's why I'm really surprised that I ran as well as I did. I'm really, really surprised. I'm really happy about it, but I'm really surprised.
Well, congratulations to Chris. Number 2 tries harder usually. Jane Day came in second, 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 20 seconds. Jane just came in second at all 3 Triple Crown races. She's happy she was able to beat Judy Chamberlain and come up with a number 2 finish on Saturday.
Yeah, I had a good time. I ran real conservatively. You know, I decided this time I was going to, hold back till A-frame, and that's where I'd start racing.
Okay. What's it like for if you could describe for the average fan how god-awful it is running up this mountain? How awful is it running up this thing?
Well, today I felt good and it was fun, but I usually hate it. And this morning I thought, I don't want to do this. It's not any fun. It's really, it's really can be a mind game if you don't feel good, and it's just the most discouraging thing. But not today. Today was fun.
As you can tell by her smile, she did have a lot of fun on Saturday. The third place finisher was Judy Chamberlain. She came in 2 hours, 42 minutes, and 1 second. She, of course, is the defending Triple Crown champion, but she didn't quite have enough speed to keep up with the pack on Saturday.
No, Judy's not a real good mountain runner, but she does know how to keep her competition off guard, and she certainly did that today.
You bet she did. In fact, she was very strong toward the middle part of the race, kind of slacked off a little bit toward the end, but she is a true champion. She won the Triple Crown for the 2nd straight year in a row. Congratulations to Judy Chamberlain on a great race on Saturday.
I'm real excited. I wanted to win the Triple Crown overall. I also wanted to win the peak. And I knew running today that if anybody was going to beat me, they were going to beat the record because I felt good going up. It was a good day for the race, and I knew it was cool. The conditions would be really good. So I knew whoever was going to run would have to run really well in order to win, and they both did. They both ran extremely well.
And here we have the Pikes Peak Ascent winners for the men. Scott Elliott, of course, in 2:09:33. Mike Tobin in second. Chester Carl, perennial winner up here, was third today. Matt Carpenter fourth, and Greg Burrell, our Triple Crown champion, was fifth. And for the women, Chris Miasto first in 2:39:01. Jane Day, who took second in all the races. Judy Chamberlain third, of course. Susan Watts fourth, and Susan Sherry in fifth.
Now we have your Triple Crown winners. It's Greg Burrell winning it with 13 points, followed by Scott Elliott, Chester Carl, the 3-time champion, Stan Allison, and that last name I'm not even going to attempt to read that one. Go on to the women. Judy Chamberlain was first with 5 points. Jane Day came in second. Liz Britton was in third. Susan Watts in fourth. And Sharon Foster came in fifth. Now, a lot of the runners on Saturday looked very fresh, the lead runners, I should say. But for the average pack runner, well, it was pure torture going up the hill. They faced a lot, but had a lot of support to go along with them. 13.4 miles with a gain in altitude of over 7,600 feet. It looks as painful as it sounds. But fortunately for these runners, there was plenty of help on Pikes Peak to ensure a safe ascent. The search and rescue team was busy keeping track of the 1,449 athletes who started the race and the 160 who couldn't finish. There was also an emergency room doctor on hand, along with dozens of ER nurses and paramedics.
The most common things are basically fatigue, altitude sickness. We get a lot of headaches, and fatigue's the biggie. We have to basically get them rehydrated, get fluids in them. There's been nothing serious thus far. We fortunately have not had to hang an IV yet. Things are going pretty smooth.
For most of the Ascent runners, the challenge wasn't to win, but rather to finish.
Oh, I think people that really love the mountains and the air and the challenge, I think that they don't get in the flats. And I think just the feeling of being able to finish a run like this is spectacular. Absolutely the biggest high you can get. It really is.
But for some runners, the high altitude didn't produce a high feeling. Sure, they'd beaten the mountain, but not without paying a high price.
It's almost indescribable, and it's insane too. I think it's been about 3 years since I've run up here, and I thought I'll just try it one more time, and I think this will be my last time. It's incredible.
Well, if you think the Ascent looked difficult, coming up is the marathon. We'll have that for you coming up right after this. Well, welcome back, everybody, to KRDO's exclusive coverage of the 1987 Pikes Peak Marathon and Ascent. In this part of the show, we'll cover the marathon. And if you can believe it, we mentioned Saturday was cold. Sunday, the weather conditions were even worse.
Sunday conditions were actually horrible, John, in my opinion. If I had registered for the round trip, I'm not sure I would have run it. The weather was just cold, the clouds had set in and just laid on top of that mountain.
A number of photographers had mentioned that it was 18 degrees wind chill on top of the mountain. So when you're running in shorts and t-shirts, that's got to be darn cold.
It's real cold. You can see our runners here begin to warm up, get ready for the race. Start is just moments away.
We mentioned the field was cut down by a third from the Ascent, from around 1,500 down to close to 500 runners. It takes a special breed to run a marathon, doesn't it?
It sure does. The number of runners were down from the years prior, but I think maybe the weather conditions had a little bit to do with that.
Boy, do you want to stretch out before you attempt to go up. It's amazing, on Saturday the runners had trouble going up for the Ascent, but these runners have to come back down again.
They do. You punish a whole set of muscles doing the Ascent, and then you turn around and punish a different set to come back down that mountain.
So you've got to be a special person to want to do this, and a very good athlete. There's the start, as we mentioned. About 485 to 500 runners took off on the marathon. Of course, the first mile and a half is on asphalt, and then you hit bar trail coming up right after that.
You do, and as in the round trip here, we didn't seem to have a rapid who took off ahead of the rest of the pack. Everybody stayed pretty much together. This is the part where you get yourself loosened up. It's fairly easy, smooth running, and you know that sooner or later, just moments away, you're going to hit that trail.
Now, Fred, as a runner yourself, what type of strategy do you use? A lot of athletes on Saturday gave it full go going up the mountain. Do you try to save something when you have to come back down?
Probably the best advice if you're going to run either the Ascent or the round trip is don't go out too fast. From the start up to the top of Mount Manitou is about 4 miles, but you gain almost 4,000 feet in elevation. And if you put all your energy into that section of the mountain, there's really nothing left. And once you get above timberline, it's amazing how drastically your time's increased for the miles that you run. And if you don't have anything left at that point, you're just going to suffer.
Here's some of the fans that brave the weather conditions, the chilly 30-degree temperatures. There's a young fan who's very intent on watching this great race.
Looks like he's contemplating possibly running it himself.
There's Stanley Fox, our early leader, but Stanley had some problems in the mountain yesterday, didn't he, Fred?
He did. He appeared fairly strong throughout most of the race. Coming back down at the top of Mount Manitou, he got into some trouble, and we actually had to evacuate him off of the mountain.
And here's Tom Sobel in second place, and Sheldon Larson was in third there. A little later on, Sheldon's going to make his move. He isn't going to last very long in third, is he?
No, he isn't. Sheldon makes his move probably just above bar camp, and we'll see what he does.
Here the average runner's a good morning to run. As we mentioned earlier, sometimes the cooler temperatures allow for an easier run because your body isn't heating up as fast. But as we mentioned also on Saturday, this trail is so narrow that a lot of people walk up on Saturday. I would guess a fourth of the runners walked up bar camp. On Sunday, I would guess over half did.
I would say you're probably right, John. You get warmed up once you get started up that mountain. Clothes begin to come off, and the cooler temperatures are a lot better for you because it does keep that body core temperature down.
A number of groups were running together yesterday. An Arkansas group, a contingent of over 60 were hooting and howling and giving the Arkansas howl. So it was a fun afternoon and a fun morning for all these runners.
We have several groups. We have a group called Army's Army that comes out every year, this group from Arkansas, and then also, of course, the famous Peak Busters founded by Walt Stack about 12 years ago, which is a group of women that run the mountain every year.
Well, I mentioned the fact that Sheldon was in third. There's where he made his move. He's in second now, and it looks like Tom Sobel is in third. There's Sheldon, and Tom will be right behind him. So from here on out, it was really a race that Sheldon didn't look back on. He really took off.
Yeah, he did. He, I think, kept checking back to see who was behind him and to see how much lead he had. There's Tom grabbing some water there at bar camp.
Now, Sheldon made his move between bar camp and A-frame, of course, when Mr. Fox couldn't quite make it. Sheldon made his move, and there was no looking back from then on out.
No, there sure wasn't. Here we have some runners above bar camp making their way up the mountain.
This course, of course, is different in the fact that you not only have to run up, you've got to come back down. And these runners are very, very strong. You see Sheldon there. He doesn't look like he's hurting at all. He's getting close to the top of the mountain. He looks much stronger than any runner we saw on Saturday just going up.
He sure does. It's amazing sometimes that the round trip runners actually do a better time than some of the Ascent runners. And this is the combined time of having to come back down.
Well, there you see the fog is setting in definitely for Sheldon. He's going to come up on the top of the Ascent here at 2 hours and 17 minutes. That's a very good time, but you have to remember he's got to go back down again.
Yeah, he has to go back down, and the runners here, there's a code on the mountain that you give way to the downhill runners because those runners are just flying back down the mountain, and of course they have the right of way.
He doesn't waste much time. He gets a glass of water, pours one on his head, puts one on his stomach. He takes off back down the mountain. The interesting point here is he had a 16-minute lead over his nearest competitor. It's interesting the fact that he's already gone back down before we even see a second-place runner.
I think we'll see here just how great that lead is. Of course, Sheldon just disappeared around the corner here, and I think in a second here we're going to see Tom coming up. There's Tom, and of course Tom was in second place, so you can see how much of a lead Sheldon had on him.
Rather impressive. We also have to mention the fact again that we'll have people that are going up the mountain as people are going down. It's a very dangerous position to be in because these trails are very, very narrow. You're on rocks, it's wet, it's slippery, so you have to mind your P's and Q's if you want to make sure you get down the mountain safely.
You do. Above timberline, the trail's maybe only a foot wide. You can see there's Stanley Fox, who was our early leader, literally just pulling himself up through the rocks. Looks like he's a little bit disoriented there, picking his way up the mountain.
Now Stanley went up to the top on the Ascent, made it up, rested a couple of minutes, then went back down, then had his problems on the way back down.
Yeah, actually he didn't get into trouble until there was only about 4 miles left in the race.
There, of course, we see Tom again in second place. He finally makes it up to the top, 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 28 seconds. A good time, but you have to remember again that Sheldon had a 16-minute lead. That's an incredible feat for anybody to have on a marathon.
It's really incredible, almost overwhelming lead. You can see up on top of the mountain we had medical crews. We had people up there that if anybody was in trouble, we'd pull them off the mountain.
We have to mention again, it is very cold, very chilly, I should say. 18-degree wind chill, about 34 degrees on top of the mountain for Sunday. So these runners may look a little cold, but actually they're pumping so hard that right now it probably isn't affecting them too much.
No, probably not. Your spirit is really up at that point, especially once you've made the top and you know that the rest of it is downhill. Running the Ascent, the part that hurt me most was my hips and lower back and my calves. Turning around and going back down, you really begin to pound on your knees and your toes.
A number of runners had problems. There's, of course, is the first female runner coming up. The second place female was Gail Scott. She was off the pace by about 4 minutes, but Gail made her move going back down the hill. Is that a usual place that a good marathoner will try to make their move?
It pretty much depends upon the individual and where they feel they're the strongest. I've never really been able to witness the lead runners going back down, but I can imagine they're just flying over those rocks, and I'm sure a lot of those people just cut every corner they can possibly cut in order to get back down.
There's Gail, as you mentioned. She doesn't spend much time up there. She gets a glass of water, checks her watch, and flies down. She's got a unique personality, really bubbly, a lot of fun to watch, and believe me, you've got to have that kind of personality to want to run up a 14,000-foot mountain.
You sure do. There's Linda Quintlisk, who won a couple of years ago the marathon. She's a local girl from Cascade. Here we have some runners. You can see where people are doubling back on themselves. We have people coming up and the runners, of course, heading back down.
It is kind of a nice courtesy that the runners going back down do have priority because they're coming a lot faster and they can't always stop when they want to and make those corners. So the runners going up, it's kind of a nice camaraderie to have that on the mountaintop.
It is. There's a lot of camaraderie on the mountain. You talk to people. There's Phil Foster, another local runner. You talk to people, you see the same group of people. If anybody looks like you're in trouble, you ask, are you okay? Anything I can do? Give them a candy bar or whatever you might have to help them out.
Even the animals didn't seem to be phased. They were up there kind of chilly, watching these strange human beings run up and down a mountain. They didn't seem to be phased, but it was an awful lot of fun for everybody. Finally, we're back down off the top, down into tree line again. Of course, there's our leader, a big leader in a big way, Sheldon Larson.
And once you hit the tree line again, it's a little bit warmer. Looks like we have somebody in trouble here. I'm sure it was probably a runner who just for some reason couldn't finish the course, and of course the medical people make a determination, and they feel if they need to be pulled off, they pull them off the course.
And once again, we have to take our hats off to the great medical crew and the great support crew that take care of these runners. They actually monitor all of them as they go up the mountain to make sure no one gets in trouble.
They do. There's hundreds, literally hundreds of people on that course. People camp out there 3 nights in a row in order just to be there to service the runners.
And of course, there are a lot of just volunteers in general all over the race course. Here they're giving out water. These athletes have to replenish their body fluids. They take a good pounding coming down that mountain, so that water and Exceed sure does taste good. And of course, now is the point of the race where Sheldon Larson really made his move. And when we come back, we'll take a look at the finish of the race. It wasn't surprising, but it sure was fun to watch it. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everybody. After that long trip up, then the trip back down, it's finally time to take a look at who won this race. There he is. Sheldon Larson came in 3 hours, 41 minutes, 56 seconds, and he looked very strong in winning this race.
I just went out and ran my race today. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to go out hard at the beginning, and I wanted to feel good by the time I hit bar camp to hit the next 6 miles to the top, and it just worked out. No one was around me when I was up there, so I just kept going.
And here we have the men's winners of the marathon. Sheldon Larson, of course, in first, 3:41.56. Tom Sobel second. Mark Barber third. Kevin Cooney fourth, and Randy Eisler in fifth.
Now on to the finish for the women. It was Gail Scott, who we mentioned was in second for a lot of the race. 4 hours, 28 minutes, 59 seconds. She's a 2-time champion. She's bubbly. She's always in a good mood, and she is a true champion.
And Richard Johnson, he's 45.
It's wonderful. I love running Pikes Peak, and winning it 2 times is such an honor. And to feel so good up there. The weather was perfect. The course was beautiful. I felt terrific.
She felt terrific, and she made all of us feel terrific. She won it in 4 hours, 26 minutes, I should say, and 59 seconds. Linda Quinless was in second. Kim Schaefer came in third. Michelle Hurt in fourth, and Margie Lloyd Allison in fifth place. And of course, we spend an awful lot of time on the winners in races like this, but it's actually the average runner that is really special, and in this type of marathon, they're even more special. Mike Cassava has more.
As expected, yesterday's Pikes Peak Marathon was an extremely grueling event. For most, the finish line was a welcome sight. For others, there was just pain. It was an emotional day for all.
It definitely is, because you don't really come in first for these races. I mean, it's very select few that do, and it's an individual achievement.
As she said, the people you see crossing the finish line now are not part of that select group of runners who finished first, second, third, or even 20th. These are the runners who are just glad to make it.
Oh man, it was the toughest race I was ever in. But I'm glad I finished. That's all I wanted to do.
I really wasn't in shape to do it, but I wanted to give it a try. I had a chance to come out, and I just love the mountains. It's just great, but it is brutal.
One gentleman from New York City compared his city's race to the peak.
It's like running 2 New Yorks.
How do you feel about finishing it?
Very grateful and thankful.
These runners braved altitude, rain, and fatigue, crossing terrain that even most animals avoid. Even though these racers are 2 to 6 hours off the winning times, it really doesn't matter, because they've just finished the toughest marathon in the world. Reporting from Pikes Peak, this is Mike Cassava, Sports 13.
Well, it was a great Ascent and marathon, and when we come back, we'll be back to wrap it up, so stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. Let's take one more look at the Triple Crown champions for 1987. First for the guys, Greg Burrell became the first 2-time champion. He won it back in 1984 and again this year in 1987. For the ladies, well, Judy Chamberlain won her 5th straight championship. She's won every year since 1983. She picked up a first place in the Garden of the Gods this spring, also a first place in the Diet Pepsi. And on Saturday, she picked up a third-place finish in the Pikes Peak Ascent. Congratulations to Judy. She's a fine, fine athlete. And of course, Fred, we have to say these athletes get a little bit more than just the satisfaction of winning the Triple Crown of Running.
They sure do. Both Judy and Greg, I'm sure, were thinking about the warm waters of the Caribbean because they both won a trip to San Martin. And our age group division winners win a season ski pass to Keystone Resorts. Second and third place people win gift certificates to Concept Restaurants.
And we can't forget about the awards banquet coming up. That'll be a fun time for everybody.
Sure will. It'll be on Wednesday, September 16th down at the Clarion at 7 p.m. And it's for all the runners and their families, and it's just a celebration, our way of saying thanks for running the races.
Speaking of saying thanks, we had an awful lot of fun this year. 3 shows. We have to thank an awful lot of people. First and foremost, the Triple Crown of Running staff. They did an excellent job for us, and especially this weekend, Carl McDaniel, the race director, put up with cold temperatures and an awful lot of hungry runners. He did a great job for us. Nancy Hobbs, the Triple Crown of Running administrator, helped me out tremendously this year with an awful lot of information. Nancy, thank you very much. And of course, we have to thank our own staff as well, headed by Tom Grinowich, our producer. His staff of editors and photographers made our job so much easier. A great job of shooting the video this year and editing it. Thank you very much, guys, for that. We also want to say a special thanks to the people at Bar Camp this weekend who helped our crew, put up our crew all weekend. They did a great job, good hospitality, so we have to say thanks for that. And of course, a big thanks goes to Fred Mays. Fred, thank you very much for being with us this year. You did an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
And of course, we have to say thanks to the audience. Thank you very much for staying with us for 3 shows, including tonight. We'll see you again next year for the Triple Crown of Running. Good